For ambitious dads caught between work and home, this is where you find your footing. Here's your host, Jeff Hittner.
Welcome to another Ambitious Dads podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I realized we're not talking enough. Not about our fears or our ambitions or how our kids are really doing or how we're holding up in the middle of all of it. This podcast is for the dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones carrying a lot, questioning if they're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Let's figure this out together. Today's guest is someone who's lived more lives than most of us can imagine. Maurice has been a federal agent, a police officer, a real estate investor, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a world traveler who's touched down in more than 100 countries. On paper, it looks like the perfect resume of ambition. But behind all those titles, Maurice also has been living the role that matters most: dad to 2 sons. And that's where the story gets real. Juggling law enforcement shifts, business deals, flights across the globe, and still trying to be present at home, that can't be easy and it can't be clean. It's not something you can just schedule on to the calendar. So in our conversation today, I kind of want to pull back the curtain with you, Maurice, I hope you don't mind, and ask all about this. Like the questions that so many of us as ambitious dads are constantly wrestling with. How do we choose big goals without losing connection with our kids? And where do we all tend to fall short as a father when we feel like ambition might be taking over a bit on the work side, right? And how do we integrate our children into these unique lives that we're building instead of just hoping they understand it later? So I want to dive into all of this, but first I just want to welcome you to Ambitious Dads.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it, my man.
Awesome. Why don't there's so much to dive into, but why don't you tell just, if you can briefly, because I know how incredible your sort of career and life journey has been. Can you fill in the holes? Like, you have a ton of different careers. You have done a ton of different work. Yeah. You're traveling between 2 parts of the earth. Tell us about that.
Well, and whenever I do, thank you for having me, by the way.
Yeah.
And whenever I do, I'm not against origin stories, but when you go back to like your childhood, you gotta re-unpack things over again. So I tend to go about it a different way, and I'll go about it a different way. I'll just start from where I am. Okay.
Please.
I got my vintage 1975 t-shirt on that I was working out in this morning. So I was born in 1975. I turned 50 last August.
Congratulations.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I know where I'm supposed to be because I'm no longer in the work world, the traditional work world. I'm out of the W-2 world. I spent 25 years at Accenture, which is an IT management consulting firm. Very grateful to them. 22 years in the military as a federal agent, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel. Grateful to the U.S. Air Force for that opportunity. And I also spent 15 years as a street cop in the Washington, D.C. area, running midnight patrol, just as a means to give back to local community. And all the while, not money related, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I was always a real estate investor since age 21 and earned what I call the 5 freedoms: time, financial, geographic, purpose-related freedom, and freedom to build meaningful relationships with people like yourselves and Noah who connected us. And that core journey for me was about 17 years of investing in or storing money from my paychecks intentionally, investing them in condos or whatever I was buying, single family homes. I ran into problems, of course, like everybody else, but it landed me years later at age 38, financially capable, but I stayed working until I was 46. And the whole notion of everything was I wanted to, as you know, my moniker, I wanted to try life on. I did not feel when I got into the corporate world at age 21 that was it. Like something was off about the whole thing. And that's been my work-related journey, was those 4 careers that I did parallel the entire time. And now I'm much more of a digital entrepreneur. I run a private investment firm that I started with partners and doing some TV projects now. I had my first son when I was 25. So that was totally unexpected with my college sweetheart. We are not together, obviously, but we are the best of friends. Weirdly, she's like a sister to me now, but that's how much we've worked on our relationship. And I'm still very, very tight with her family. So my oldest, Jay, floats the way that I float between Maryland and Lebanon. I helped my oldest son design his life, and he now floats between Atlanta, where his mother's side of the family is, and Maryland, where we are, especially because he has a little brother here. So Jalen's 25, works for Amazon, is an amateur bodybuilder trying to get his pro card, et cetera, et cetera. And then I have a younger who's 12. And one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast with you so early in the mornings, because he's a swimmer. Katie Ledecky is an Olympian who's from the Maryland area, this county where I live in. And he got invited to an invitational this weekend. His mom and I, so he was born in 2013. And that's right at the cusp of me doing all the things that I was doing. That's been an interesting journey for him, but he's upstairs sleeping right now. And we have me and my two boys. What I'm proud of the most out of all the things that I told you was the tight relationship that we have, no matter where we all are in the world, because we always come back to this farmhouse where we live in, stay connected.
That's awesome. So tell me, because, particularly with all of your travels, like I can't get my kids, and they're younger, 5 and 8, they engage for a maximum of like 30 seconds on FaceTime or, anything phone related. So how did you stay so connected, particularly with your oldest, but now also with your 12-year-old traveling between so many parts of the world?
I think it's because it's what they've known of me. And my father, who is 78 now, he sent me to France for 30 days when I was 15 years old as an inner city Boston kid. And that changed my life. And that kept me traveling because I felt what I think you're feeling in Valencia, which is there's different ways to live life. More importantly, there's different ways to feel on a day-to-day basis. I'm born in New York, raised in Boston, from Washington, or live in Washington, D.C. now. But I've done East Coast U.S. I know it really, really. Mm-hmm. So when I'm in other parts of the world, I feel a certain way. All right. So my kids have been part of that journey too. I think Jalen, my oldest, has been to 14 countries with or without me already. And Noah, my 12-year-old, is on his 11th country. So that it is part of our DNA. And it does come from me a bit, but it also comes from the story of their grandfather opening up my world. So they stay connected, they stay interested in it, and they are part of the process, including like travel hacking, trying to get into business, going to lounges. Like we make it a game.
I definitely do that so we can get back to the States as often as possible. So first of all, this is super interesting. For your father to have done that for you is not typical. No. And you and I are almost the same age. I won't say mine out loud either at the moment. But tell me a little bit about that. Like you're a Black man from Boston, and you go to what part of France do you go?
Paris.
Did you speak any French?
Yeah. I'm a French speaker. So my family's from Haiti.
Okay.
So my brother and I were the first generation born in the States. My dad was born in a place called Port-au-Paix, which is a small village town in the north of the country in the Caribbean Sea. He made his way, effectively chasing my mom, to be honest, but he made his way to the U.S. a long time ago. We have a French culture in my family. My grandfather on my mother's side is half French, rest his soul, and Chinese, which I found out years later, which is crazy. My dad studied English and to be a teacher in Montreal and has always had an affection for exposing his kids to different culture. The trip was 1990. In 1989, the same exchange student came to my house in Boston, stayed with us, and then my dad sent me to his house. Back then, there's no cell phones. There's barely beepers at that point, right? And then I'm inner city Boston knucklehead kid, and my dad puts me on a plane. I'm gonna be up like with these white people, and I'm like, Dad, I don't understand why you sending me over here, and it freaked me out, to be honest. But it was the best 30 days I've ever spent because we traveled around the country, French funerals, French wine, French food, French girls, French. And then I just felt different about life. I was like, oh, so life is not playing basketball and trying to get into the NFL only. There's more to it. So I'm glad he did it.
There are lots of parents that reach out to me that are like, I love that you're in Valencia. Like, how do you do that? I want to move over, or with our family, we want to do this experience. And in my head, I'm going, for every, not even 10, for every 20 people that say that, only one will actually have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
And part of that too, the ones that often have the courage to do it still don't have the courage to put their kids in a school that's in the native language of the country that they're coming to. They'll put them into an American school or an English speaking school. What do you think is required for parents right now to offer that sort of resilience to their kids and that sort of gift? Can you talk to that? You obviously had that experience, but now you're offering it to your kids. What kind of mindset do you need to have to enable that to happen?
Parents need to wake up.
Do tell.
I was about to swear my ass off, but listen, we are all based on, like, we came into this life, we were source energy, we didn't know anything, and then we learn from our society, we learn from our parents, we learn from formal education, and we get wired a certain way. So you remember in high school, I say this all the time, grade school or like kindergarten, elementary school is like creativity, throwing paint and da-da-da. Middle schools, the compliance starts to set in. Julie, bring this home to your dad, Jeff, and have him sign it. And then high school is all competition. So we just have this one, like, get to the AP classes, or who's going to be the MVP, or who's going to get to Harvard versus a community college. All right. So then parents have this blinder thing on that their kids have to compete, or to be successful in this world, they have to operate and think a certain way. However, thank God I started traveling, because I started seeing how other people were living. When I was spending time in Brazil in my early 20s, like 40 plus times, people would just go to work so they could have churrasco, which is a barbecue on a Saturday, and then it would go back to work to do it again. I want my kids to experience that. As much as I'm happy my son is going to go to his swim meet this weekend, that's not all of life. I want him to experience certain things. So I challenge parents to get out of that norm. And one of the things in my coaching that I've expressed to people is life is not a destination. It is something you practice. So just like you have practiced living in Valencia, and over time it has become something that is somatic to your body and it's in your nervous system now. Same thing with me in Lebanon. It wasn't comfortable being there. I was there when bombs were dropping and things of that nature. Open the aperture. There's so many different ways to live and so many experiences to have. If we don't do that for our kids, in my opinion, shame on us. And one last thing, but it's okay. Like, nobody has to raise kids the way Jeff and Maurice raised their kids. Just have to be aware of it and make a conscious choice, and eventually allow your kids to make their own choice. Don't live through them.
And what about, how do you manage, even with all of this experience, like the fear of when you're each of your kids, I don't know if your 12-year-old at this point has gone off on an adventure on his own, but for sure your older son. So, as you recall, both, like, how am I on this plane heading to France, and now put yourself in the shoes of your dad having done that. Like, what did it feel like for you when you first did that for your oldest? Because I think a lot of it is around fear, right? And like wanting the best for our kids, but also wanting to protect our kids. And so, like, I think that's a real dad struggle.
Fear is absence of faith. There is no fear. There's just absence of faith. Look, man, you said it. I grew up in the inner city. I was a midnight police officer in DC area. I was a federal agent. You can imagine all the quote unquote bad stuff that I saw and experienced. The world is 95% good. The news and traditional and social media perpetuate the 5% that's bad into 100% of everything. Your children are not going to be, you are not going to be with your children your whole life. Either they're going to die first or you're going to die first. Get over it. And you have to push them out into the world. You should push them out into the world and know that you've given them the skills, the resources, and more importantly, the smarts, and the street level smarts and the book level smarts, and just the ability to follow their instinct to take care of themselves. My mom did something that it was by accident. She didn't know that she did it. I've talked to her about it to this day. I was 18 years old at University of Virginia. It's the summer between freshman and sophomore year. I called my mom and I said, "Mom, I don't have any money. I'm really struggling." She said, "Well, welcome to the club." Best thing she could have ever did for me, because I've never been home ever, not home, but I've never relied on my parents ever since, because I had to figure it out. Mm-hmm. If you shield your kids from everything negative in this world, it's going to be tough. My son is autistic, my oldest son. He's very high functioning, but he is autistic. So if you speak with him, you'll tell that his expressive language is a bit off. Like, he can't connect in a lot of ways that quote unquote the normal person connects. But he's also a black man. He's also 6'2" and he's massive. He's huge because he's a bodybuilder. Dude, I'm a police officer. I was a police officer for a very long time, in law enforcement for 25 years. But to show him what to do on a traffic stop, I took him out and I had some of my shift mates pull him over on purpose so he could exercise what it is that I think how he should conduct himself, so he never gets misinterpreted by his speech.
Wow.
All right. So now my son knows how to deal with the worst scenario that I worry about as a dad. Let's say a police officer who doesn't have the mental skills that I had when I was out on the road or care of people, but Jay knows how to deal with it. All right. I've pushed my boy out into the world and he can handle it. We got to push our kids out into the world to the extent possible.
What are you doing with your 12-year-old? And not necessarily in that context, but just in general to build up his own resilience at this point since he's younger, but also maybe to the independence aspect.
My kids are blessed and they know that they are blessed, but it does not come from a silver spoon or anything. Like any relative wealth or ability that we have was hard work and everything. But both of my kids know the three pillars that we have. One is you have to be happy. I don't want my kids doing things just because I say so. I give them the freedom to tell me what it is that's going to make them happy that day, because ultimately our job while we are in human form is to find a way to be happy day to day. Two, they have to be a good person. I don't care. I'm not interested in them being great. Barack Obama, Nelson Mandela, whoever, the Pope. I really have no interest in that. Are you a kind person? Can people feel your presence when you enter a room? Do you hold the door? Are you respectful to your mom? And then three, and this is where I deviate from people, you have to learn how to make money grow.
Let me challenge you on the first one, because I don't think it's my responsibility to help my kids be happy. I think it's my responsibility to help them be purposeful. Happiness as a goal is fleeting, and it's not really there's lots of shortcuts to happiness. Dopamine is a shortcut to happiness, right? But purpose is where I find like more long-term meaning.
So when I was an executive, for example, and both of my kids experienced when I was a police officer, they would ask me, Dad, why would you go to work 8 hours in a suit and then come home and sleep 2 hours after doing homework with us and then put on a police uniform and go? Because it makes me happy. That's it.
Because for you, you were happy was connecting with your community and doing something.
Yeah, I'm a service-driven person. I am very much a service-driven person, whether it was serving in the military, serving people, micro giving. And I'm not virtue signaling. It genuinely makes me happy that I could walk around my community and do something to help people in an official capacity. My kids have figured that out. So I don't mean, hey, I'm going to play video games today, and that's what's going to make me happy. I mean, look, if you want to hang out with your brother and the medium you're going to use is to play video games together, or like last night, I asked Noah, what do you want to do that's going to make you happy right now? He's like, Dad, I just want to play Connect 4 with you. So before we go to bed, we either read, we play a board game. I'm not big into electronics too much, but I will say one thing about that. I want him to think holistically about what it is that's going to make him happy on that day. Not, I want a piece of gum and that's all I need. No, man. Like, think about what you want. You're just 12, so don't go beyond 12. But think about what you want to do. Like, I don't want him like going to a convent or something and learning how to be a priest at 12 or something like that. But just think about day to day, wake up with intentionality, say what it is, and go do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And these three sort of values or virtues that you mentioned, is that something very explicit that you talk about as a family, or is it something that's more in your head?
No, it comes from my journey of, look, we already said the journey, all the careers, but the most important thing for me was making a conscious decision to become a real estate investor. It had nothing to do with money. It had everything to do with learning that if I could generate passive income, it could free up my time. If it could free up my time, I could go have more experiences, because France made me happy. Going to Turkey, like I would get on a plane on a Wednesday night or Thursday night from DC, fly to Turkey, read a book and come back. I would travel hack my way to do that. I like the culture of it. I like the feeling of it. So I would come back. Those three things, my kids, through my own journey, have recognized he was always trying to do expansive things that would make him happy. I don't appreciate, or I'm not interested in necessarily societal definitions of success. Like I turned down being partner 5 times in favor of having more time to go travel, that kind of thing. Right. So they have felt it. They have felt the goodness of what I want them to be. And most important, and because we need money in this life, please go get your job, store your money, and every once in a while buy an asset, because once you do turn 48, 50, it will give you the freedom to go be the expansive person that you want to be. And I don't mean millions. I mean just covering your basic needs. Do you need $4,000 a month to cover your mortgage, your food, your whatever? Fine, get that, because then after that you have choices and you're not beholden to somebody else's dream, building theirs, whereas you want to be building yours. So they know where it comes from. It comes from a definite place of everything that I've been through. So I try and impart that on them, but they have ultimate decision. That's the way it goes.
Love it. So talk to me a little bit about two words that for me go hand in hand: connection and exhaustion. Because when you tell me your story about like how many careers you're holding or you were holding at the same time and then raising kids, like I would think my ability to stay connected and sit down and play Connect 4, for example, for an hour would like max out at 10 minutes because I would just be done. So what was that like in terms of a struggle, if there was one, and you know, staying connected when you had so much going on?
There are trade-offs to everything. And I'm very blunt with my boys. I didn't have you to give up everything that I wanted to do. They know it. I would actually not challenge what you said, but maybe challenge the thought process of people. The more free time I have, it was actually the less connected I was, because it's almost like Parkinson's law, right? Because you always feel you have time because I got 8 hours today to do nothing. I'll get to the kids eventually. But because I was so busy, man, when I was with my kids, I was so intentional. And if I'm not with my kids, they know it's because dad is doing something that's really important to him. So there's no middle ground of like, dad's messing around. There's only dad is hyper intentional about things. So now, but let me take a step back. That was not an easy journey. That was not an easy journey that I did. And I do think sometimes my kids suffered a little bit. For example, I deployed in 2015 for almost 2 years. No, it was 2 years to like 3 and some change, except for 1 or 2 times. I missed something in his evolution. That's on me, but that's a choice I made because I was serving and I was gaining all this experience. And the beautiful thing is all those experiences are now informing his life. We cannot be everything, the end all be all of our kids all the time, but you have to find your own personal balance of what makes sense to you. And for me, it made sense. Like even when I was a street cop, I would come home in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. because I patrolled in my neighborhood, and I would go up to my kid's room and I would sit with them. He wouldn't even know I was there. I would just go sit with them for an hour. And then when a call would come in on the radio, I would leave my house and I would go do the call. So I was hyper intentional about it.
And hyper intentional and in conversation with them? Were you hyper intentional? I mean, I think you've explained really well that you live your values and they see that. Do you also verbalize it? Particularly when you travel as much as you do, like this is why daddy's going here and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I do verbalize it, but the way that I'm verbalizing it now at 50 is very different from when I was doing it at 30. Like I've evolved so much as a person, and I've come to understand that I have a very strong self-concept on who I am, what I do, how I do it. I told you I have zero interest in other people's versions of success. None, zero, nothing. My kids feel it. But that comes with practice and age. I think in my 30s, my 20s and 30s, so Jalen, my oldest, in my 20s, I struggled. I think we all struggle. And I pen it as entrepreneurial depression. I was trying to figure out all these things I wanted to do. I was trying to make it to the NFL, but I was trying to be a dad. I think I was doing a pretty decent job. I was fighting his school system to get him into a private school when I had no money. It was very challenging. And I don't wish that journey on people because it was difficult a lot. But the way that I verbalize it to the boys now, probably in the last 5 to 7 years, I know that their lives are going to be super solid. I wouldn't be speaking to you with this level of conviction if not for all of those experiences and moments of life contrast and what have you. So they feel it, and we do verbalize and talk about it.
And how do you manage personally the tougher moments? I mean, I can only imagine the process of finding like a diagnosis for your son in terms of autism and managing all that. There must have been some really difficult challenges along the way, and some when you weren't necessarily even there, right? How do you manage that internally in terms of your ego, your ambition as a dad? Because one of the things I've found, there's a lot of data now that I have captured around how low self-confidence is for dads, because more than any other time, we identify primarily like as fathers is our first identity, men today. But when you ask them what their confidence level is on their fatherhood, it's really low. So only a third of dads think they're doing a good job. And part of that is they beat themselves up. They have a lot of shame when they make mistakes. They think it's the end of the world. So talk to me about it, because for sure you've had some big challenges. And how do you keep your head above water on those?
Nowadays, and especially in the last 5 to 7 years, it comes from mental dieting. I left social media in totality. I don't listen to other people's definition of what I'm supposed to be as a father. I have 2 litmus tests as a father. 1 is my father, period. And 2 is my faith, period. My mind, I've been on a bit of an inner journey for a while now. And what I can tell you is I listen to my instincts really well. And that is enough for me to know that I'm raising my kids well enough. I think a lot of the people, and I will go back to some of the challenges, but I think a lot of the people who may have that lack of confidence in their ability to father or what have you, it's coming from comparison to other people. I don't compare myself to anybody, not interested. They don't have my last name. I don't have their last name. I got one person's last name, and that's my father. And the way that he raised me got me to a particular place, and that's good enough for me. Now, with the challenges, when I found out Jalen was autistic at age 30, that was 2005, and autism was barely understood. That was really difficult. You just go with it. You just have to trust yourself and go with it. Nowadays, I listen to my kids a lot. They have a very loud voice with me. So it was actually Noah, my youngest, in 2021, who said, "Dad, I don't want you to be a police officer anymore." He didn't like it. And the reason he didn't like it is because he was getting old enough. So 2021, he was 8, 9 years old. He was getting old enough to recognize kind of the things that I was dealing with in the middle of the night. And I was like, you know what? I've been 25 years of military police. I never got hurt. I got into bad situations and things of that nature. And I'm financially capable. I have all this life left to pour into these boys. So I listened to them, both of them. Neither one of them is interested in me going back into that world. Yeah. So you just got to follow your instinct. And I do think we need to give our kids a voice to an extent, because they feel things. Our kids are closer to source energy and God and faith than we are, because they're so young. They haven't been tainted by all this stuff that we deal with as adults yet. So it's important to listen to that too.
And you know, one thing I actually find, some of the lack of self-confidence is not so much from comparison, but too many dads don't know like what is an issue versus what is normal. So for instance, when I started all of my interviews with ambitious dads, you know, I had 2 young kids at the time. They were probably like 2 or almost 3 and 5 or 6. And they would fight nonstop. Yeah. And I'm like, what on earth am I doing wrong as a dad? I cannot stop these 2 boys from fighting. Right. And it took me like 5 interviews with other ambitious dads and asking this question for those dads that had like just boys to be like, oh, no. This is so normal. This is like part of early childhood development for boys. Right. And just hearing that like dropped my cortisol levels by like a factor of 10. And so for me, it was actually, I needed more sort of, it's not comparison, but I needed more inputs. I needed to know that like stuff that I was seeing, stuff that we were going through was the norm of fatherhood, because I wanted to be like, it's just so important to me that I wanted to know that I was on the right track in certain areas. So like, how do you balance that? Were you also, you know, when there were challenges, when your oldest did get diagnosed, or when your youngest was like, "Dad, I don't want you to go out and be a policeman in the middle of the night," were you talking to other dads about it? Or like, how did you get some of that insight?
No, I wasn't. And I got to be honest, I still don't. So for example, to be clear, when I raised my oldest, it was very different because of his autism. I didn't deal with the typical teenager things. Jalen is the most docile, sweet, young man who did not fall into things because he didn't necessarily understand them. Okay. So his teenager years were very docile. Never experienced. Now, Noah, oh my God, brother. He's 12 years old. He's going through what I think you and I went through around 15, 16. Because there's so much information available. There's so much stimulus. There's so much social media. There's so much, like he's talking to me about trans people now. And just like there's a trans person in his class and dad, what does this mean? And I'm like, oh man. All right, brother, let's sit down and have a chat. Our childhood is not what our kids are going through.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that. So for example, we're redoing his room now. And I said, I am going to put a double computer screen in your room. And the reason I'm going to allow that is because I would be remiss if I told you to stay off of electronics for the rest of your life. You live in a digital world. We have to figure out together how you're going to operate in it in a good sense, right? So that's me acquiescing and being like, nah, man, there's no more ColecoVision and Atari. He's going to be dealing with apps and social media and things of that nature. I'd rather be an active component in it than him struggling with that stuff. So I'm going with my intuition. I'm going with my gut. My father didn't understand when I was trying to go out for the NFL. He just wanted me to be an engineer. But he said, look, if that's what you want, then here's some principles for you to pay attention to. He followed his gut. I'm following my gut, and I'm doing the best that I can.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about what keeps you up at night as a dad then. Are there things that, in general, when we have those irrational moments in the middle of the night that are your focus?
No, I think I trust my boys. I do get calls and they do stupid shit. Don't get me wrong. Like they're both of them are doing dumb stuff sometimes. I guess the one thing that I worry about that I intentionally work on is making sure the line of communication is open with no fear.
How do you do that?
Well, okay, so my parents raised me a little bit with an iron fist because I'm an immigrant kid and I was being raised in the 80s. I got hit with the belt, I got yelled at and all that type of stuff. And I'm very grateful because I almost ended up in jail, stuff I was doing as a teenager and all that. My father worked 3 jobs to get me out of public school and put me in a private school because he was afraid I was going to go down a wrong path. I'm so grateful. With my boys, that's not the way that I raised them, especially my youngest. Jalen, my oldest is fine, but Noah, yes, I yell at him, but I have a conversation with him all the time. I don't want to raise you like this. I don't want to raise you where you are in fear of me. That's not the point, brother. I want to raise you where you feel that you can always communicate to me no matter what it is. No matter what it is. Now, if you're at your mom's and I'm overseas or something and I'm not down the street, whether it's FaceTime audio, FaceTime video, sending me a message or running down to the house, he's done that. Me and his mom live pretty close together intentionally. I want you to always be able to just communicate to me and I will never judge you. And your safe place with me is always your room. Like if you need a moment, you tell me, Dad, I need it. I got to go. I think everybody should have a place where they feel like, look, this is my cocoon. I get to chill for a little bit and then Dad will come talk to me after and stuff like that. So the thing that keeps me up or that I'm very intentional about is lines of communication with the boys. Because let's be honest, Jeff, they are going to experience, your kids too, are going to experience the things that you and I have no idea.
Yeah.
And we won't know when it's happening either. But we can have a line of communication where they feel safe telling Dad, you ain't gonna believe this shit. I got to tell you something. That's what I want with my boys.
I love it. And how does that line of communication differ with their mom and you? Because that also becomes kind of important as well in the context of this.
We play different roles. I tell both of them, I'm going to raise you into strong-minded young men. It does not mean you can't be emotional. Your emotions are extremely, extremely valid. In fact, your emotions are actually your guidance system on things that are going wrong or not going wrong. But I tend to be more of the stoic in the family, where the moms are much more like in the weeds of what's going on day to day. I'm much more the strategic person, the overarching, what is the value of this? What are we getting out of this? Like we have a swim meet, as I was telling you, and an Olympian will be there. I want to go meet her because Noah, you can be whatever it is you want to be. You don't think this young lady was 12 years old at some point before she was Olympian? She probably said, I want to be an Olympian, and became one. I'm kind of much more of the overarching thought process. And they need it, because when I get heavily stoic, or when I get heavily staunch in my approach, mom is the softer thing. And we need that. But especially at age 12, like that was for Noah, that was like 7 to 11. Right now at age 12 to like 16, 17, I'm playing a heavy role just to keep him in line and things of that nature. So we need both parents. That's why parenting is a dual sport.
Yeah. Love it. What else should I have asked you? What else goes on, or practices do you have with your kids, particularly in your unique, like travel focused life? I mean, so for instance, your youngest, how old was he when he first started traveling with you overseas?
Oh God, two. But it's not, I just want to be clear. It's not a travel focused life. I have an experience focused life. And many times that experience has to deal with feeling and exploring and being expansive in other cultures that you know nothing about. That's how I've been my entire life.
I appreciate that distinction. How, when you do that sort of intentional travel and experience with your sons, how do you bring that intention to them? So for instance, I just brought my kids to Madrid, and we went to the museum that has Guernica, which is this, right? This, and I very intentionally explained, look at the suffering in this painting. Do you understand what it's about? And we talk a little bit about history, trying to be very intentional about the experience of why we're looking at this huge painting in this famous room in a museum. So when you're with your kids and traveling, how do you bring that intention to them?
Our travel is not random. It's not random by any means. It's usually something. And by the way, yes, I've been to 100 countries, but I'm not exploring anymore. I have found my rhythm in the places that I really enjoy. So I know where I live now. I live between coastal Maryland, and I live somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean, typically. I'm not really like trying to reach all 198 countries or something like that, just for what it's worth. But whenever we do travel, it's intentional. So I took my son, my youngest, this summer to Switzerland and to south of France. Switzerland was because I wanted him to experience a new country. And I am a wake surfer. So I was like, man, we're a Haitian family, but we're going wake surfing in Switzerland. I want you to understand the balance of what that means. And then one of the exchange students that I spent time with in France a long time ago, she and I have been friends for 36 years.
Oh, cool.
So we went to her house in southern France, and our kids know each other well. So there's a picture in my house of me and my son walking in southern France down a street, and a picture was taken and stuff. I doubt he will ever go there again, but he knows the importance of France in my journey. So I've asked him, where do you want to go next? For him, it's Japan. He's like, Dad, I want to see Japanese culture. I know it's different than our thing. I want to experience it. I want to feel something different. That's what I always wanted him to tell me. Not, I want to go visit this country, but I want to go experience something different. And he says it. It's very intentional. It's usually tied to my life, or what he wants to do, or something he wants for his life, or he's a big NFL kid. So we went to the Minnesota Vikings game. I spent way too much money, but I took him to the locker room and all. I want him to feel that he can dream and be something.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know. By the way, I'm introducing him to one of his favorite NFL players on Monday through a connection. It's intentional. It's like, all right, brother, we can sit in the house and play video games, or we can go see the real thing. Let's go see the real thing and feel it, no matter where it is in the world.
What I love about what you're saying too is, when our kids grow up, and as your oldest is, now in his 20s, their memories aren't going to be the toys, right? They're going to be these experiences that they had with dad, these crazy trips they took, and, all that stuff. And that's what excites me the most. Both my kids, I bought this really cool pizza oven, and we make pizza all the time. And one of the boys was like, Dad, where is pizza invented? And I was like, oh, it comes from Napoli in Italy. And they're like, can we go visit?
Let's go check it out.
Yes, let's go check it out. So that's on our to-do list in the next year, is just let's go there for however little or as much time as we want, and just eat as much pizza as we can. And those are the experiences that I really value.
And I have to tell you, because people are going to listen to this awesome conversation and be like, what? He was a police officer and federal agent and corporate for 25 years and a real estate investor and went to all these countries. But you just nailed it. It had nothing to do with that career, or the money, or being a real estate investor, or all these countries. It was my instinct was telling me to expand as a person.
Yeah.
I think people look at my journey and was like, man, he was just all over the place, kind of doing so many things just because. No, we are spiritual beings having a human existence. We are intended to expand. Now, you can expand intentionally, or you can expand unintentionally, but you're going to expand. You can do what formal school tells you to do, and success looks like working for Google, or you can be a baker and travel the world if you want, if success looks like that to you. But no matter what, you're either going to expand intentionally or expand by default. I expanded intentionally. So what I'm showing the kids now through all these experiences or whatever, or if you feel, and it doesn't have to be some other country, literally right down the street. I don't care. We follow it. Follow it. It's all we have. Like, I'm expressing all this stuff to you from 50 years of being whoever I'm being, but because I followed the expansion that was on my mind. And my dad gave me that thought process. Now I'm just giving the same thing to my kids. Now, whether or not they travel all over or start businesses or just they're a good employee, I don't care. But know that it's your choice to expand and be intentional about it. And I think that's my greatest gift that I received from my father. And I give that gift to my kids.
I love it. That's a perfect way to end. So, Maurice, thank you so much for sharing your story and being so intentional about how you make these decisions in your own life and the life of your children. I really appreciate it. And I think our audience will too.
It's a blessing. I love the topic. Thank you. It's the first time I really talked about my kids in this way, or just fatherhood in this way. So I appreciate it for sure.
Thanks so much.
All right, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Ambitious Dads Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation and want more insights on balancing ambition and fatherhood, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upcoming episode. Check out the links in the description for our newsletter and more resources to help you live intentionally as a dad. See you in the next episode.